Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're diving into a question we got. What does the future hold for religion? We've got this really interesting article.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's by Reverend Tamara Ravello. She's a pastor.
Okay.
And also, get this, she was the first Indigenous student government president at Yale Divinity School.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah. So while this piece isn't all about like hard data and
Right.
trends, Reverend Ravello, she offers a unique perspective on how faith might, evolve, even thrive potentially in the years to come.
It's definitely it's a relevant discussion, especially with all the changes we're seeing, in society today.
Yeah, for sure. And she starts off, she acknowledges what a lot of us are thinking about, right?
Yeah.
Attendance is down. Younger generations, they seem less interested in organized religion,
Yeah.
all those concerns. But here's the twist. She doesn't believe religion is dying. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's easy to look at, those declining numbers and think, oh, well, that's it then. But Reverend Ravello, she's pushing us to think deeper. It's not about blind faith. It's more about how religion functions within society, how it's always
Yeah.
it's a powerful force that shapes culture, defines values.
Yeah.
It's constantly evolving.
So let's unpack that, this idea of evolution. So she argues that for religion to stay relevant, it needs to change, right? It needs to change with the times, meet people where they are today.
And we're seeing this, like think back to the pandemic. Churches had to get creative
Mm-hmm.
and fast. Technology went from being this,
Yeah.
nice extra to totally essential. I mean, for everything, services, even communion.
That's a good point. I remember, seeing friends share, virtual wedding ceremonies online, people joining from all over the world. I mean, people who wouldn't have been there otherwise. And it struck me that this wasn't just a temporary thing. This could be, a glimpse into the future
Yeah,
of religious experience.
right. It's not about technology replacing religion,
Right.
but giving new ways to participate. I mean, you've got online streaming, apps for prayer,
Mm-hmm.
meditation.
Mm-hmm.
They're meeting people literally where they are.
It's like she even says this apps of the apostles,
Yeah.
which I love that phrasing.
It's catchy.
It really captures the idea, and it gets you thinking, what could these apps look like? Could we have like personalized prayer guides, virtual pilgrimages, even like AI-driven spiritual advisors?
It's fascinating to think about. We always think of religion as tied to like tradition, physical spaces.
Yeah.
But this suggests a future where faith could be much more like individualized,
Yeah.
Accessible anywhere, anytime.
Yeah. And is that a good thing? Do we lose something when we move away from the physical gathering? The shared experience of, a congregation?
That's a key question she raises. She doesn't answer it, but Reverend Ravello, she focuses on the need for religious leaders to be innovative, to be strategic. She even uses the word implementation,
Right.
like a business plan for the soul.
There's this line that really stuck with me. Just because something has always been done a certain way doesn't mean it has to continue to be done that same way. It's like a challenge to, rethink our assumptions.
Totally. And that leads to a big question that she asks.
Yeah.
What new models, what new methods is God using to speak to people today? Religious institutions, they need to figure that out if they want to stay relevant.
So if we're not abandoning religion, but rather changing how we engage with it, what does that look like? She argues that people haven't necessarily lost their faith. They're just expressing it, differently.
Right. And if we connect this back to technology, this shift, it's not entirely new. Religion has always adapted to new tools.
Yeah.
The printing press, radio broadcasts,
Yeah.
it's just the latest evolution.
Yeah.
Driven by the digital age. It's just the pace of change is, it's definitely accelerating.
She talks about churches having to get creative during the pandemic really quickly.
Yeah.
And they had to, find new ways to do things, hold services, communion, even, modifying music and the language of creeds
Yeah.
to be like more relevant.
Yeah.
And people responded. They were like met where they were at through technology and innovation.
And this is where the idea of being a conduit for transformation comes in, right? Religious leaders need to be open to change.
Yeah.
Be willing to experiment and ready to meet people where they are, literally and figuratively.
It makes you wonder, what if this is just the beginning? If technology is reshaping how we connect with our faith now, what might that look like in 5, 10, 20 years? We've talked about apps and virtual spaces, but is that even scratching the surface?
That's a question worth diving into. And it might just lead us to some surprising possibilities.
So, okay, we've said, religion's evolving, but how far could that go? What happens when we combine this like really personal, ancient thing, faith, with this crazy fast world of technology?
That's where things get really interesting, right? I mean, we've talked about virtual spaces and apps, but what if that's like just the beginning? What if in 10, 20 years, we're all going to VR churches talking to AI spiritual advisors?
I'm trying to picture that, going to a service in this like virtual cathedral that doesn't even exist in the real world, with people from all over, or having this AI that like designs your own spiritual practices for you. It sounds like kind of like science fiction.
It does, yeah. But technology, it has this way of, like, yesterday's science fiction is today's reality. But think about how much has already changed, even just in the last few years. Reverend Ravello talked about religious leaders needing to be strategic, innovative. It feels even more urgent now, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's not enough to just like react to the changes as they're happening. They need to like be ahead of the curve, right? Understanding how technology could completely change religious experience.
And the thing is, technology, it's not good or bad on its own. It's a tool. It's all about how it's used, what values it supports or challenges. Like a virtual cathedral could connect people in amazing ways, no more geographical barriers.
Yeah.
But then do we lose something when there's no physical presence, no shared space?
That's a good point. And what about this AI spiritual guide thing? On the one hand, you could get like totally personalized support, yeah, answers to all your questions, but is there a risk of like oversimplifying really complicated spiritual stuff, or even becoming like too reliant on technology to tell us what to think?
That's the tension, right? It makes me think of something else Reverend Ravello brought up. She was wondering how religious institutions could help, bring people together in the world, especially now when it feels like everyone's just in their own little bubbles.
Yeah, that really resonated with me too. It's almost like a call to action. How can faith, even as it's changing, be a force for connection, for understanding each other?
And it's funny because technology might actually be part of the answer. Imagine like online platforms that are built for respectful interfaith dialogue. People could share what they believe, learn from each other's perspectives.
I love that. That could be like the opposite of all the fighting we see online,
Yeah.
and a place where people actually look for common ground instead of just highlighting their differences.
And that brings us to something really important. We're not just talking about the future of religion here, we're talking about the future of humanity. How can we use all these amazing tools we have to create a better world, a world where everyone's more connected?
It's a big question, and I don't think there are like easy answers, but I do think these kinds of conversations where we really dig into these possibilities and the tensions too, that's where we have to start.
Absolutely. If we can stay curious, keep asking questions, be open to the challenges and the possibilities, that's a good place to be.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot. Evolving practices, AI spiritual guides, technology, maybe helping to bring people together. But it's easy to get lost in these big ideas, right? Like,
Yeah.
what does this all mean for you listening right now on a more, down-to-earth level?
That's the real question, right? I mean, it's cool to think about these virtual cathedrals and AI advisors and everything,
Yeah.
but how would that actually like work with your own beliefs, your own practices?
Right. What if you like pictured your spiritual journey, in this world that's changing so fast? Would you be into a virtual reality service? Would you want guidance from an AI? Or does that feel, I don't know, like too weird?
I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. It's more about like being open to what's possible, thinking about how these new things could, I don't know, maybe make your connection with your faith stronger or challenge it or even change it completely.
And Reverend Ravello, she didn't shy away from the tough stuff in this article. She really challenged religious leaders, right, to be innovative, to adapt, to really get how people are connecting with their faith right now. But that's a challenge for all of us, isn't it? We're all part of, shaping this future of religion, whatever it ends up looking like.
I think that's a big takeaway from this whole conversation. It's not something that just happens to us, This future of faith,
Yeah.
we create it through the choices we make, how much we participate, how willing we are to try new things.
So, as you're, going about your day, think about this. How could technology shape your spiritual journey in the next few years? What new ways of connecting, growing, finding meaning, might open up for you. Maybe it's something like joining an online group, with people from different faiths, or maybe it's something we haven't even thought of yet.
The important thing is to be curious, to keep asking these questions. And remember, this isn't like the end of the conversation. Keep exploring these ideas. Talk to people about it, friends, family, people in your faith community. We're all in this together figuring it out.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep exploring.